Hey there, friends. Today I want to talk about something that feels counterintuitive but is absolutely essential: emotional detachment. Now, before you start thinking that emotional detachment means shutting down, not caring, or becoming numb, let me stop you right there. Emotional detachment is not about building walls. It's about setting boundaries. It's not about avoiding emotions. It's about owning them without letting them own you. It's about learning to stand in your truth without being consumed by someone else's chaos. And if we can learn to emotionally detach in a healthy way, we open up a world of freedom, peace, and clarity. Hey there, friends. Before we dive in, I have a small but mighty favor to ask. If you're finding value here, if these conversations resonate with you, spark new thoughts, or maybe even offer a little comfort, go ahead and click that like button. It's a simple gesture, but it truly makes a big difference. And while you're at it, why not subscribe? That way you'll be part of this space where we keep showing up, learning, and growing together. Oh, and don't forget that little bell icon. Give it a tap so you never miss a moment. Finally, if you know someone who could use a little encouragement or maybe a fresh perspective, go ahead and share this with them, because the most powerful conversations are the ones we have together. Thanks for being here. It means the world. Now let's get started. When we talk about owning your story, we're talking about stepping into your truth fully and unapologetically. It's about recognizing that your life is yours to live, not a script someone else gets to write. But here's the tricky part. We often hand over the pen without even realizing it. It happens when we shape our choices around what others might think. It happens when we silence our needs to keep the peace. And it happens when we internalize other people's opinions and let them become the narrative we live by. Maybe it's the parent who told you that you'd never succeed doing what you love, or the friend who questioned your choices and made you feel small. Or maybe it's that subtle fear of judgment that whispers, "What will they think?" So many of us carry those voices around, letting them weigh us down. But the truth is, those voices don't belong to you. They're echoes of someone else's pain, fear, or insecurity, not your own. When we let others write our story, we lose sight of who we really are. We shrink to fit into boxes that were never meant for us. And the worst part, we convince ourselves that this version of life, this watered down, fear-driven version, is all we deserve. But it's not. You deserve to live a story that's honest and bold, a story that reflects your values, your desires, and your truth. Owning your story means taking radical responsibility for your emotions, your decisions, and your reactions. It's acknowledging that while you can't control what others do or say, you have full control over how you respond. It means asking yourself, is this belief mine? Or did I inherit? Am I making this choice from a place of courage or from a place of fear? Because when you stop reacting to the world around you and start responding from within, that's when you truly reclaim your story. Now, this doesn't mean we ignore feedback or dismiss every opinion that doesn't validate us. Growth requires us to stay open, to listen, and to reflect. But there's a difference between accepting constructive feedback and absorbing harmful criticism. One helps you grow, the other keeps you small. And when you know the difference, you can stand tall in your story without being swayed by every passing judgment. Owning your story also means making peace with the messy parts. We all have chapters we wish we could tear out, moments of failure, heartbreak, regret. But those chapters are part of the story too. They don't define your worth, they define your resilience. They are proof that you have endured, that you have learned, and that you are still here turning the page. And let's be clear, owning your story doesn't require permission from anyone. You don't need validation to claim your narrative. You get to be the author. You get to say, this is who I am, this is what I want, and this is how I choose to show up in the world. And that declaration, that's the bravest thing you'll ever do. So the next time you feel pulled by the weight of someone else's expectations, ask yourself, whose pen am I holding? And if the answer isn't yours, take it back. Because the most powerful thing you can ever do is own your story and refuse to let anyone else write it. Boundaries are one of the most powerful ways we can honor and respect ourselves. They are not walls built to keep people out. They are gates we consciously open and close, deciding what we will allow into our lives and what we won't. Yet for so many of us, setting boundaries feels uncomfortable. Maybe it's because we've been taught that saying no is selfish, or perhaps we fear that setting boundaries will push people away. But the truth is, boundaries are not a rejection of others. They are an affirmation of our own worth. When we struggle to set boundaries, we often find ourselves living on emotional autopilot, reacting instead of responding, pleasing instead of protecting, and giving far beyond what we have to offer. We say yes when every fiber of our being is screaming no. We tolerate behavior that drains us because we don't want to seem difficult. We allow our time, energy, and emotions to be dictated by others, believing that being agreeable means being lovable. But that's not love. That's fear. And fear will always have us sacrificing ourselves for the comfort of others. Setting boundaries is an act of courage. It requires us to stand up and say, I matter. My needs matter. My peace matters. And let's be honest, that's not always easy. There will be people who don't understand your boundaries. Some may even resist or resent them, especially if they've benefited from your lack of them in the past. But boundaries aren't about controlling others. They're about taking control of yourself, your time, your emotions, your energy. They allow you to show up in your relationships as your most authentic self, without resentment simmering beneath the surface. And let's be clear, boundaries aren't a form of punishment. They're a form of clarity. When you set a boundary, you're not saying, I don't care about you. You're saying, I care about me too. Healthy boundaries say, I'm responsible for my emotions and you're responsible for yours. They say, I will no longer abandon myself just to make you comfortable. And the people who truly care about you will honor those boundaries, even if it takes time to adjust. One of the hardest lessons we learn when setting boundaries is that not everyone will like them. And that's okay. You are not responsible for how others react to your boundaries. You're only responsible for holding them. And sometimes holding a boundary will mean walking away. It might mean stepping back from relationships that consistently drain you. It might mean saying no to opportunities that compromise your values. It might even mean disappointing people. But when you choose to honor yourself, you gain something far more valuable than approval. You gain peace. Boundaries also teach us about reciprocity. When you set boundaries, you give others permission to do the same. It creates a relationship rooted in mutual respect, not obligation. And in that space, authentic connection flourishes. You're no longer giving from a place of guilt or fear, but from a place of genuine love. You're no longer carrying the emotional weight of others, but encouraging them to take responsibility for their own well-being. That's how we build healthier, stronger relationships, not by sacrificing ourselves, but by respecting ourselves. It's important to remember that boundaries are not one size fits all. What feels like self-respect to you might look different to someone else, and that's okay. Your boundaries will evolve as you grow, and that's a sign of self-awareness. Maybe your boundary is limiting the time you spend around people who constantly drain your energy. Maybe it's declining conversations that cross your emotional limits. Maybe it's recognizing when you've given enough and need to step back. Whatever it is, the act of setting and maintaining that boundary is a declaration of self-respect. And here's the beautiful part. The more you practice setting boundaries, the more natural it becomes. You'll notice a shift within yourself. You'll feel less anxious, less resentful, and more grounded. You'll stop over-explaining yourself or seeking permission for your choices Because when you set boundaries, you're no longer living for the approval of others, you're living for your own well-being. So the next time you hesitate to set a boundary, ask yourself this: what would it look like if I respected myself enough to say no? Because every boundary you set is a reminder that you are worthy of peace, you are worthy of joy, you are worthy of a life that feels aligned and whole. And no one else gets to decide that for you, only you do. Taking things personally is one of the quickest ways to lose our sense of peace. It's something we've all done. Maybe a friend cancels plans, a coworker makes a dismissive comment, or someone responds to us with irritation. And before we know it, we're caught in a storm of self-doubt. What did I do wrong? Why don't they like me? Am I not good enough? It's exhausting, isn't it? The constant wondering, the emotional tailspin, all because we assume that someone else's actions are a direct reflection of our worth. But here's a truth we often forget. Most of the time, it's not about us. People's reactions are shaped by their own experiences, insecurities, and internal battles. Their anger, disappointment, or frustration is rarely a mirror of your shortcomings. It's a reflection of what they're carrying inside. And when we understand that, we gain the power to detach. Think about it. That friend who lashed out, maybe they're struggling with something they haven't shared. That family member who criticized you, perhaps they've been holding onto their own regrets and projecting them onto you. And that stranger who cut you off in traffic, odds are they weren't thinking about you at all. They were probably stuck in their own thoughts, worrying about their job, their relationship, or their never-ending to-do list. We tend to assume people's behavior is a direct response to us, but the truth is we're rarely the main character in someone else's narrative, and yet we personalize because our brains are wired to make sense of situations, and when we don't have all the information, we fill in the gaps with stories. Stories that often center around our own perceived flaws. Oh, they did text me back. I must have annoyed them. My boss seemed frustrated in that meeting. I probably did something wrong. But these assumptions are rarely rooted in reality. They're born from our own insecurities. So how do we break free from this exhausting cycle? It starts with curiosity. Instead of immediately assuming the worst, we can pause and ask ourselves, what else could be true? Maybe that friend is overwhelmed and needs space. Maybe your boss had a tough conversation before the meeting. Maybe the lack of response has nothing to do with you at all. When we get curious instead of critical, we create space for grace, both for ourselves and for others. Detaching from the belief that everything is about us also means recognizing our own triggers. When we take things personally, it's often because something within us has been touched, an old wound, a fear, or a belief that we're not enough. That's why two people can experience the same situation but walk away with completely different reactions. It's not about the event itself, it's about what it stirred inside us. The next time you feel that familiar sting of personal offense, pause and check in with yourself. What am I feeling right now? Why does this hurt so much? What story am I telling myself about this situation? Often, the narrative we create is far harsher than reality. And when we recognize that, we can choose to rewrite it. But let's be clear, not taking things personally doesn't mean we tolerate mistreatment. Boundaries are still essential. If someone is repeatedly disrespecting you, ignoring your feelings, or crossing your limits, that's not a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of their inability to show up with kindness and respect. In those moments, emotional detachment doesn't mean staying silent. It means responding from a place of strength rather than from a place of emotional reactivity. It's also important to remember that emotional detachment isn't about shutting down or pretending that words and actions don't hurt. It's about feeling the pain without becoming consumed by it. It's about recognizing that your value doesn't diminish just because someone else fails to see it. You don't have to carry their burdens as your own. You don't have to prove your worth to people who are unwilling or unable to see it. When you stop taking things personally, you reclaim your power. You no longer live at the mercy of other people's moods or opinions. You begin to stand firmly in your own truth, knowing that your worth is not up for debate. And from that place of strength, you can respond to the world with compassion, not because others have earned it, but because you've learned that protecting your peace is the greatest act of self-love. So the next time someone's words or actions feel like a personal attack, take a breath. Remind yourself, this is not about me. Their reaction is theirs to own. My worth is not determined by their behavior, and then choose to let it go. Not because it didn't matter, but because you matter more. Emotions are powerful. They move through us like waves, sometimes gentle, other times overwhelming. Joy, sadness, anger, fear, excitement, they are all part of what makes us human. But here's the challenge. While feeling our emotions is essential, becoming them can consume us. It's the difference between experiencing sadness and believing I am sadness, or feeling anger and thinking I am an angry person. When we merge with our emotions, they no longer feel like passing experiences. They become our identity. But emotions were never meant to define us. They are signals, messengers, trying to tell us something. Sadness might be calling our attention to a loss that needs to be grieved. Anger may be pointing toward a boundary that has been crossed. Fear could be signaling that something important is at stake. When we listen, we gain valuable insight. But when we resist or suppress those emotions, they tend to grow louder, often showing up in ways we don't expect. In our bodies as stress, in our relationships as resentment, or in our choices as avoidance. At the same time, becoming consumed by our emotions can leave us stuck. Have you ever felt so overwhelmed by frustration that it lingered far longer than the situation that caused it? Or experienced anxiety that spiraled into endless thoughts of worst-case scenarios? When we become our emotions, we lose perspective. We act from a place of reactivity rather than intentionality. And most of all, we lose sight of the truth that we are not our feelings, we are the ones experiencing them. Learning to feel our emotions without becoming them starts with presence. It means creating space between ourselves and what we're feeling. Imagine your emotions like clouds in the sky. Some days the sky is clear and blue. Other days it's filled with dark, heavy clouds. But no matter how fierce the storm, the sky remains. You are the sky. Your emotions are simply the weather passing through. And like all weather, they are temporary. One of the most powerful ways to practice this is by naming what you're feeling. It sounds simple, but naming our emotions, really naming them, instead of saying, I'm so anxious, try saying, I'm noticing anxiety in my body. Instead of I'm angry, try I'm feeling anger right now. That subtle shift in language reminds you that your emotion is something you are experiencing, not something you are. Once you've named the emotion, allow yourself to feel it fully and without judgment. Our culture often teaches us to avoid discomfort at all costs. We numb it with distractions, minimize it with phrases like I'm fine, or dismiss it by saying, it's not that big of a deal. But emotions don't disappear just because we ignore them. They linger beneath the surface, waiting to be acknowledged. Feeling an emotion doesn't mean we have to act on it impulsively. It means we give ourselves permission to be human, to sit with the discomfort, to breathe through it, and to listen to what it's trying to tell us. And here's the beautiful part. When we allow ourselves to feel an emotion without judgment, it often loses its grip. Have you ever cried through sadness and felt a sense of relief afterward, or expressed your frustration in a healthy way and felt the weight lift? Emotions are like waves. When we let them rise and fall, they naturally pass. But when we resist them, they tend to crash over us, repeatedly. It's also important to notice where emotions show up in our bodies. Anxiety might tighten your chest, anger might burn in your stomach, and joy might bring lightness to your heart. Our bodies hold so much wisdom, often signaling what we're feeling before our minds fully register it. By tuning into these physical sensations, we create an even greater sense of awareness. Try asking yourself, where do I feel this emotion in my body? What does it feel like? Can I simply breathe into this sensation without trying to change it? This practice brings us back to the present moment, grounding us when emotions feel overwhelming. But what if the emotion feels too intense? That's when self-compassion becomes essential. Instead of criticizing yourself for feeling a certain way, offer yourself kindness. Remind yourself, it's okay to feel this. I'm allowed to have this experience. I am not my emotion. I am the one witnessing it. Compassion creates space for healing. It allows us to tend to our emotional wounds rather than judge them. And as we practice this emotional resilience, we become more skilled at choosing how we respond. Because while we don't always control what emotions arise, we do control how we act on them. Maybe anger is urging you to have an honest conversation. Maybe sadness is inviting you to rest and reflect. Maybe joy is reminding you to savor the present moment. Every emotion offers an opportunity to respond from a place of clarity and self-awareness. The truth is, we will never reach a point where difficult emotions stop showing up. Life will continue to bring moments of pain, frustration, and fear, but when we stop fearing our emotions and start honoring them, they lose their power to define us. We begin to understand that we can feel sadness without becoming despair. We can feel anger without becoming destructive. We can feel fear without becoming paralyzed. And in that understanding, we find freedom. So the next time a wave of emotion rises within you, pause, breathe, name it, feel it, and remember, you are not your sadness. You are not your anger. You are not your fear. You are the sky, vast, steady, and limitless. And no matter how strong the storm, you will remain. Choosing peace over the need to be right is one of the most liberating decisions we can make. But let's be honest, it's not always easy. We've all been in those moments where every fiber of our being wants to prove a point. Maybe it's a disagreement with a partner, a tense exchange with a coworker, or a debate with a friend that leaves us feeling misunderstood. The temptation to defend ourselves, to correct others, or to win the conversation can be overwhelming. After all, being right often feels like validation, like a confirmation that our perspective matters, that we are seen, heard, and respected. But here's what we rarely pause to consider. What's the actual cost of needing to be right? Because when we cling to that need, we sacrifice something far greater than temporary satisfaction. We sacrifice our peace. We waste precious energy rehearsing arguments in our minds, strategizing clever comebacks, and searching for ways to prove our superiority. We may win the argument, but we lose our calm, our clarity, and often our connection to the people who matter most. The truth is, the need to be right is often driven by something deeper. It can stem from fear of being misunderstood, fear of being invalidated, or fear that our worth is somehow tied to our correctness. When we're operating from that place, conversations become battlegrounds instead of opportunities for understanding. Our goal shifts from connection to domination. And instead of listening with curiosity, we listen to respond, to poke holes in the other person's perspective and prepare our counterattack. But peace invites us to take a different approach. It asks us to pause and ask ourselves, is being right more important than being at peace? Is proving my point worth the toll it will take on my well-being and my relationships? More often than not, the answer is no. Because the truth is, most arguments are not about the actual subject at hand. They're about the underlying emotions, the longing to be seen, the desire to be understood, and the fear of disconnection. Choosing peace doesn't mean you have to agree with everything. It doesn't mean silencing your voice or abandoning your values. It means recognizing that your inner calm is more valuable than winning a debate. It means understanding that you can stand firmly in your truth without forcing others to accept it. Because genuine confidence doesn't need constant validation. When you are secure in yourself, you no longer need to convince others of your worth or the validity of your perspective. And let's not forget, sometimes peace requires walking away. Not every disagreement is worth engaging in. There will be moments when no amount of reasoning will shift someone's perspective, especially if they are unwilling or unable to listen. In those moments, the most powerful thing you can do is release the need to control the outcome. You can choose to step back, protect your energy, and allow others to hold their beliefs without it threatening your own. That's not weakness. That's strength. But what about those situations where the conversation really does matter? Maybe it's a conflict with a loved one, a difficult workplace conversation, or a discussion about values that runs deep. In those moments, choosing peace means leading with curiosity rather than defensiveness. It means setting aside the desire to win and instead asking, what can I learn from this? What might I be missing? What is the other person trying to communicate beneath their words? When we listen with curiosity, we often discover that the person we're in conflict with is not our enemy. They are simply someone with a different lived experience. Their beliefs, reactions, and perspectives are shaped by their own story, just as ours are shaped by ours. And when we create space for understanding instead of judgment, the conversation shifts. We no longer see disagreement as a threat. We see it as an opportunity to grow. It's also important to remember that choosing peace doesn't mean you can't stand up for yourself. There is a profound difference between surrendering your peace and asserting your boundaries. When someone is disrespectful or dismissive, it's not choosing peace to tolerate behavior that undermines your worth. True peace comes from knowing that you can express your truth with calm confidence without shrinking yourself or becoming consumed by the need to be right. You can say, I see things differently, and I'm okay with that. You can disengage without resentment, knowing that your inner calm is not dependent on someone else's approval. And here's the thing, choosing peace is contagious. When you respond to conflict with patience and understanding, it often invites others to do the same. It diffuses tension, shifts the energy of the conversation, and opens the door for resolution. Even if the other person remains defensive or combative, your choice to stay grounded in peace protects your own emotional well-being. You walk away knowing that you showed up with integrity, and that is a victory far greater than winning the argument. So the next time you find yourself in the heat of disagreement, pause, take a breath. Ask yourself, what's more important right now? Proving I'm right or protecting my peace? Remember that no one can take away your sense of calm unless you give them permission. And when you choose peace, you're not just letting go of the need to be right, you're reclaiming your power, you're choosing freedom, you're choosing yourself. Emotional detachment isn't about shutting down, it's about showing up for yourself. It's about loving others without losing yourself. It's about creating space where your energy is protected, your peace is sacred, and your heart is whole. So today I challenge you, own your emotions, set your boundaries, stop taking things personally, feel but don't become, and choose peace over the need to be right. Because when you master the art of emotional detachment, you don't become cold, you become free.